are able to, they can come online and participate in the meeting. Today's meeting will be about the Senior Care Act, and we have Janice DeBoer here from KDADS to do our presentation. So with that, Janice, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you to all of the committee members. I did bring a slide deck, and I think Xavier is going to help me walk through the slides about the Senior Care Act program. Am I going to see it on the screen also, Xavier, or not? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So let me begin by again saying thank you, and then we can move to the next slide. The Senior Care Act program was actually established by Governor Mike Hayden in 1989. He actually introduced the idea of a program in Kansas that would be available to seniors who may need some assistance in their homes, but would not necessarily need to impoverish themselves before receiving that service. So he very deliberately and intentionally recognized that there may be some seniors who need assistance, but they don't yet need to apply for Medicaid, whether that was to go into a nursing facility or to receive community-based services. Even at that time, he suggested that a new service be introduced. And it was introduced in 1989, and the legislature actually passed that piece of legislation. I believe it was unanimous in the House and the Senate, as I recall from my research a few years ago, as a pilot. So in 1989, the pilot began, called Senior Care Act. It truly was and still remains an early intervention, prevention type service delivery system. The program assists older Kansans who have functional limitations. So if you think in terms of, you know, maybe not quite yet knocking on the door of a nursing facility, but close enough, many of these Kansans live alone. So you've got that Kansan, that senior who lives alone and is getting a bit nervous about their future, and they're not yet knocking on the door of a nursing facility, and they don't yet need Medicaid per se, but they just need a little help. That is really who this service provides a delivery system for and to. Next slide. So the program itself, we oversee the program at KDADS, but the program itself is administered through the 11 area agencies on aging. And if you're not familiar with this particular group in your counties, I would highly recommend that you become familiar with the area agency on aging directors. There are 11 of them across the state, and I will share with you, they, in my opinion, have done a phenomenal job over the years of administering the Senior Care Act with efficiency in mind. I mean, the Senior Care Act stretches dollars as efficiently as any program that I'm familiar with. And I'll share more details with you about the actual numbers here in just a bit. But and I will also make a note in just a bit that I do think case management is the linchpin of this program, and I'll talk about that more later. So next slide. The program is targeted to individuals 60 years or older. I believe was possibly the result of the Older Americans Act, which also targets the 60 plus population. It's not 55 and it's not 65, it's 60. And it has remained 60 since its inception. Similar to Medicaid is a functional assessment is completed, which establishes a threshold score. That's not unusual. That's quite normal. And then a plan of care is developed outlining the services. Here's what makes Senior Care Act unique, and I will share with you, this is Kansas specific. I mean, this entire program is Kansas specific, but this particular feature is all about Kansas. So when this was developed, I'm not sure if it had a sliding scale fee in the pilot program initially, but over the years, the legislature recommended that a sliding fee scale be implemented. And actually that may have been from the very beginning. I'm not sure of that. But what makes this program unique and unusual is that seniors do contribute. They contribute to the cost of their care on the Senior Care Act program. Now, depending on their income, we may just receive some donations from some seniors, and yet others may pay 10, 20, 30% of the cost of their services. It works well to continue to support the program. As far as the services provided under the Senior Care Act, these services won't surprise you at all. Attendant care, respite care, homemaker, chore services. One-time services may be a bit unique, and they're incredibly efficient, and we'll have some more stories here in a bit. But so think in terms of needing help with mowing the yard, more importantly, needing help with washing your hair or getting a bath, or even some respite care. So it's very typical, the services you would expect to see, except for the one-time services, which I think have an element of flexibility that is very, very efficient. The Senior Care Act program does allow customers to self-direct their own care. They can choose their personal care attendant or homemaker. That's very similar to other programs we have in Kansas, including the for elderly waiver, where they can choose who they want to have help them with a bath, for example. Again, the Senior Care Act program, I wouldn't say that it mirrors the supportive services of the Older Americans Act. I would say it closely defines the services similar to what we see under the Older Americans Act, which was enacted in 1965 at the same time that Medicare and Medicaid were signed into law. The Older Americans Act was signed into law. So next slide. The funding of this particular state program is a combination of state general funds and federal social services block grants. It initially was all about SGF, and then probably 10 or 15 years ago, at least, the shift was made to the social services. Right now, it's a $7 million program, and I believe right at 4 million a social services block grant, and the remainder is SGF. So the bulk of the funding for this particular state program is the social services block grant, along with some SGF. I think the highest appropriation level was 8 million. I thought at one point it was up to 10 million, but Brad Ridley did some research for us, and he said he didn't think it had ever exceeded 8 million as far as the total budget appropriated for this particular program. The Senior Care Act actually serves about 4,000 individuals. So if you do some quick math, if you take 7 million divided by 4,000, that's not a lot of dollars, and it per month per person, and it actually isn't. I mean, excuse me, these dollars are stretched and then stretched some more to reach as many seniors as possible, but not over deliver services so that we can meet the needs of as many people as possible. So if you take 7 million and divide by 4,000 individuals, that's only about $1,750 a year, or $145 to $150 a month. Now that's average. Some seniors receive more, some may receive a little bit less, but the services are very, very efficiently managed. And this third bullet gives you a sense of just how many hours of attendant care, which is obviously the most popular service, the hours of case management, and the hours of homemaker. I will share with you my perspective after being around this program for years and being familiar with the 11 area agencies on aging, I think case management is truly the linchpin of this program. I think it's helpful for that senior who receives these services to have a phone number of a case manager that he or she can call if something changes in their life, if they need more services than maybe they needed last month, if they have fallen, or whatever the situation might be, if they're finding it more difficult to prepare their own meals. I do think case management is what makes this program so incredibly successful. Next slide. Again, this is just a slide that shows some of the additional services that are provided. Nothing particularly unique or unusual until I get to that second bullet. Attendant care, you all know what that is. Case management, you know what that service means. Homemaker services, that's, you know, go in and clean the house once a month or every 2 months. Emergency response monitoring, and then respite care. Chore services, need help mowing the yard. Probably don't do as much of that as we do just chores around the house in general, and then adult daycare. The other component of this program is the flexibility with one-time services. So the AAAs do have the option of providing individualized assistance with dental care, for example, or hearing aids, or even lift chairs. So during COVID in particular, we do know that, well, I shouldn't say, let me think that through if that was during COVID. I don't know if it was during COVID or not, but we did hear from one AAA director a while back that she had a gentleman who needed help with dentures. I mean, he was having difficulty staying at home because of his nutrition, but it had as much to do with his dentures as anything. And she was able to assist him with purchasing some dentures that allowed him then to stay at home. So in addition to those more expensive items, you might say, such as dentures or hearing aids and lift chairs, the area agencies can also just purchase incontinence supplies and provide those to consumers, to seniors, or walkers or wheelchairs or shower chairs. So it's this one-time service request really does lend itself to enough flexibility that what a person needs, if the funding is available, it can be provided, which I again feel is a real complement to this particular program and reflective of seniors and their needs. So the next slide. Well, actually, this is a story of an individual who needed dentures. And the Senior Care Act program, that particular area agency on aging, was able to help this individual with the purchase of some dentures. And from his perspective, it, you know, saved his life when it came to being able to eat a more nutritious diet. I think the next slide is yet another example of a story, if you will, that this individual was homebound, had medical concerns. She lived with a caregiver. The caregiver was then hospitalized, and the idea of living alone was frightening, but she contacted the AAA for help, and through the Senior Care Act program, she was able to receive some case management services, homemaker and attendant care, help her run some errands, and that has allowed an individual such as Lorraine to stay at home, at least for as long as possible. I think there's one more story, and then I will be happy. Oh, that is it for questions. So thank you, Xavier, for helping me with that slide deck. Representative Carpenter, that was it was brief, but I will be honest with you, Senior Care Act is probably one of the simplest programs that we administer at KDADS, and also one of the most effective and one of the most efficient from my vantage point. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll do the best I can. I've been around this program for a very long time, so hopefully I can answer any questions you might have.
Good. Committee questions. Bear with me if you're on WebEx so I can find how you raise your hand. But right now, Representative Helmer has a question.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. I'm Representative Helmer. I get a lot of calls. I'm in District 79, and that goes from Mulvane to Winfield. I have a lot of calls. Is this reverberating in here? Okay, maybe that's better. Even worse. Yeah. Yeah, we're in the twilight zone. Okay, I get a lot of calls, and also the city council called upon me, and we had a meeting. We have seniors, and I'm not sure their status. I'm sure they're seniors. Not sure their social security status or their income status, but they are living in homes without heat, without water, sometimes without groceries, and the police and the council members tell me that they are not allowed to go in and invade their privacy unless they ask for help. That's my first question. I don't understand why we can't somehow work with that under a mental health type situation when they get to that status, not knowing what their income is. You know, they could have a lot of income, but for some reason they're hidden away and they've left society and they could freeze to death. The second thing is, I have a lady that has a motorized wheelchair, and I've been trying to get it fixed. I have a truck. I could borrow a trailer, but I need funds to get it fixed. And I don't, she lost one case manager, and I'm having a real hard time finding out without, you know, it's a difficult situation to find out because of she doesn't want to give me information about her personal status, I guess. So is there some way that we can find information about those people that are at that state, and I'm talking about a mental situation, that we can help those people?
Well, and let me just say, Senior Care Act is probably not the best program there. I would say for your first scenario would be APS. I mean, Adult Protective
Would be what?
Services, Adult Protective Services.
Okay, I
So
went on and read the rest of it, so I didn't know what. Okay, go ahead.
right. I mean, Adult Protective Services is really a process that is designed to assist individuals based on concerns, whether those concerns are based on a phone call and an investigation. But APS is a service available. Now, we don't administer APS within KDAS, that is administered through DCF. But if the chair wanted to have a informational hearing on APS, I'm certain the DCF folks would be happy to provide that. That there is a process in our state that does allow for investigation based on a call received. So that would be for your first example. As far as your motorized wheelchair, we would not be able to supply you with information if that customer, if they happen to be a Senior Care Act customer, if they hadn't signed a release of information form and wanted you to receive their information. So, and that's just all about HIPAA and all that comes with HIPAA. But as far as what you could say possibly to this individual who needs assistance with the motorized wheelchair, depending on the age, but if that person is over the age of 60, refer that individual to the Area Agency on Aging. If you said you're in Mulvane and Winfield, you're probably in what we call PSA PSA 10 would be my guess. So service area 10, which would be Jody Abington, is the director there. That would be my guess, representative, of where you would be on Mulvane, just looking at the map. So you can always keep the Area Agency on Aging phone number available to you so you can share that with your constituents if they call with a situation such as yours. Now, it may be that this individual is, 50 years old, not over the age of 60, but even then, the area agencies can also offer you, advice or suggestions on whom else you might want to call in the situation of needing the motorized wheelchair fix, for example. They're incredibly resourceful. So definitely you want to become very familiar with your area agency on aging that covers your counties, and make sure you have their contact information that you can share with your constituents. I highly recommend that.
And Jody's out of Kingman.
Jody's what?
Is Jody out of Kingman? Jody Atkinson?
Jody Abington. She's actually out
Abington.
of Arc City. So I'm not, I think
Oh,
I've got, I think I've got the right service areas 10, but that map on that slide deck, but contact Jody Abington's area agency on aging. The phone number is on that slide deck. If you have it there, you could call them first. I think that's who covers Mulvane and Winfield, and just ask if your area is covered by that particular AAA. If not, they'll refer you to the Central Plains, but I think you would be PSA 10.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Janet. Really informative. I just had a couple of quick questions. The first was just if you all have a waiting list or if you're experiencing any staffing shortages. We've seen that with some of the organizations we've talked to.
Yes to both. So yes, there is a waiting list for the Senior Care Act. I will share with you, Representative Vaughn, that's been very consistent over the years. So it's very consistent for there to be a waiting list on this program. There are so many seniors out there who need assistance. But the one thing that I do think the area agencies on aging do a really nice job of managing those waiting lists well. And what I mean by that is, for example, if the funding is distributed, because we distribute the funding at KDADS through an allocation formula, but we give the area agencies the flexibility that, let's say in one area, because there may be a staffing shortage of providers, that all the monies haven't been used, the AAAs have the authority to then request some of their dollars be shifted to another area of the state. So yes, there is a waiting list, and yes, we've done everything we can do to make sure that yes, there's a waiting list, but let's spend every dollar. And that is, and yes, staffing issues are concerns. We did start to hear from the area agencies even before COVID that their providers were really having difficulty recruiting staff. I mean, it's just become increasingly difficult, but that's going to be a theme you're going to hear from us throughout the entire session, that healthcare workers are just at a shortage, to say the least. But I am pleased to report that the area agencies do a really good job of attempting to spend every penny of this money every year. Now, they don't sometimes get it spent successfully to the penny, down to the penny, but they really do work together as best they can to spend as much of that 7 million, because it is just reappropriated every single year. So they have to spend it down. There's no carryover per se. So they have to spend it down every year. And that is also Representative Vaughn, where the one-time service purchases become helpful, is that if they have some dollars they haven't delivered for services, they can purchase items such as incontinence supplies and other supplies that they can then provide throughout the year. So
Answer your question, Representative Vaughn.
And you're on mute. At least you were, Representative Vaughn.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Representative Concanon.
That, Mr. Chair, whenever you have time.
You want her to follow up now?
Sure.
Sorry, quick question. I was just curious, you mentioned the fee-based structure as well. And I was wondering if that goes into the program funding or if that goes back to SGF.
Into the let me think about that. Let's see. The $7 million is appropriated, and well, here's the way it works, the $7 million is allocated. So it goes back into the program because those donations and that sliding fee scale then stretches the dollars even more and more and more within that PSA to spend. So it's necessary to have an extensive budgeting process so the area agencies know how much they've really got to spend, and the program income, if you will, the sliding scale fee feeds into how much they really are allowed to spend. You know, Representative Vaughn, I'm sure I'm right on that. But let me double check that the donations and the sliding fee scale feeds right back into their own funding. But let me double check on that. That's a good question. I should know the answer to that, but let me double check.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Representative Concanon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the presentation, Janice. As you know, I could give a great success story in this program with my experience with my mother. Over 5 years, we went from just having minimal services to quite a few, and then under the Brownback administration, the services were cut, and that was real difficult. And then those were returned. And by the time she passed away, she was still at home, but maxing out on all of the services that we could. And we were probably a couple months late in looking into a nursing home, but we managed, and it was a great service for us, and actually helped me be able to continue serving in the legislature. That and a very nice husband to take care of my mother a lot. But no, I do have a question. When you were talking about the services, you said that you can have whoever you want to do it. You can have whoever you want to give you a shower. Now, that still has to be within who your contractors are, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, even on this program, Representative Concanon, that an individual can choose to self-direct, but along with that opportunity to self-direct, there are responsibilities attached to that right, just like under Medicaid. So yes, I mean, yes, I can choose to self-direct my own care. And with that comes the responsibility of understanding what that means. Yes, you are correct. And I think we lost Representative Concanon. I hope that wasn't my bandwidth. Oh, there she is. So yes, I mean, along with self-direction is an option, which we are pleased that self-direction is an option, but along with that option comes responsibilities by that senior who chooses to self-direct. And I don't know, and I should probably know this also, I'm not sure of the take-up rate for seniors on Senior Care Act who choose to self-direct, but it is an option.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I might just add some things from last year. I think, if memory serves me right, there's about 900 people on the wait list. We had $3 million in our budget last year. And, and it was allotted because it was new spending. But the bottom line on this, and we actually saved money. Think about this. It's around $40,000 a year for someone on Medicaid in a nursing home. And so if we spent $3 million and got the waiting list of 900 people taken care of and extended them the time that they're out of the nursing home, it just makes great sense. And plus the quality of care, and plus they're living at home. So we'll continue to take a run at the Senior Care Act this year. I know our budget constraints are there and they're real, but it's mind-boggling for me to not understand how you could spend that kind of money and actually save that kind of money and then also improve the person's quality of life. So we will take another run at this, and so that's just, I just wanted the committee to know that. Some of the committee members from last year know and understand that, but new committee members, and I hope you ask questions about this. But anyway, that's my soapbox, and I'm done. So
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize. I had difficulty getting on. I want to follow up on that because we did have the waiting list of 900, but I've had two questions during the summer that I was not clear about. How do people know to get on a waiting list, and what do we do in terms of senior care services to let people know that these services are available? Because often they'll say they don't know about these services.
Right. And that Representative Ballard has always been a dilemma. Let me answer the first questions. I do believe most of the experience, if you will, with the Senior Care Act program is from an Older Americans Act experience. So if you start receiving meals on, or you get a CHAMPS card, for example, in Topeka, and you are familiar with Older Americans Act, then you have an opportunity to connect to the area agency. And then if you need more services, you can say, hey, I need more services. And the area agency on aging case manager would say, well, let's go ahead and see if you qualify for the Senior Care Act. So it's very much about a continuum. So oftentimes the seniors become familiar first with the area agencies on aging because of meals, because of nutrition. And then they may find themselves transitioning to the Senior Care Act. And then, as Representative Concanon was alluding to, then services may need to increase and increase and increase, and then eventually Medicaid or nursing home. So it is a continuum. But that said, Representative Ballard, there's no reason to believe that this program is well marketed. I mean, it just simply isn't. There isn't a lot of marketing that goes along with this program simply because it is so limited as far as its total budget. I mean, we can stretch the dollars, but there are hundreds of thousands of seniors out there who may not be even familiar with the Area Agency on Aging or the Older Americans Act or the Senior Care Act. So I think from my vantage point, the entry point is often the need for meals, just that meal site or even a home delivered meal or word of mouth. It's not known because of marketing. It's not known because of advertising per se. It is really a word of mouth. And I think that's just simply because the concern is if we marketed it, then the demand would just be so great. Then you just simply wouldn't have enough money with $7 million to stretch it as far as it needs to go, to be honest with you. But I do think the entry point is oftentimes meals. I think.
Meals. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was trying to explain it, it dawned on me like there's not enough money, so maybe that's why, but I wasn't sure. But you just kind of confirmed that. But I do have a concern about that because even though it's a small amount of money in comparison to the numbers,
Right.
we should be doing something to market it, whether we say it's through meal entry or something, because that means that a lot of people who might just need a minimum of services will get lost in the crack because they have no entry point other than the meals. So I guess the other question I have is, do we have any kind of brochure or something that says, if you are looking at these services, this is what we really have available? Or do we just not do that because we can't fulfill it? But 900 on a waiting list is probably just a snap of what really could be on that waiting list.
Exactly.
So the point I'm saying is, it might be better to say we have just so much money, but people know these services are available, and what kind of multiple services do we really have that don't overlap?
Right. And I hear you, Representative Ballard, and I'll need to check to see with this electronic age, I don't know how much we're actually relying on brochures. I know at the area agencies on aging, they have brochures, and keep in mind, it is very much a continuum. So when someone calls the area agency on aging and says, I need some assistance, then a case manager will do an assessment. And if they only need meals, then the area agency on aging will refer them to the Older Americans Act program and stretch those dollars until maybe they need in-home, and then they'll stretch Senior Care Act, and then they'll continue to stretch and stretch and stretch. So this Senior Care Act program really is a complementary program to the Older Americans Act and even to Medicaid within reason. But I do agree with you. I mean, only having 900 on a waiting list suggests that we don't advertise the programs a lot in general, but we do know that word of mouth works. So if you're leaving a hospital and you need help with meals, then you'll be referred to the area agency on aging, or even your doctor's office may refer you to the area agency on aging for meals or a little bit of help with service. So there are a lot of referral points that come to the area agencies on aging that aren't necessarily the result of marketing or advertising. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the only thing I would say is, we don't have a lot of brochures because we say we're into the digital age, we're into the computer. That is a gross assumption.
Yep.
That every senior out there has a computer or
Yep.
a laptop, or if they had it, that they know how to use it.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna have to put my little plug in there for it, because I can tell you, I can identify some homes in town that do not have computers, and you say shame on them. Well, give them money and they'll get one. Then teach them how to use it. So we can't make that assumption that everybody will get this information in the digital age, because not everybody is digital or have that instrument.
I agree with you, Representative Ballard. I'm sure you remember years ago that there was a document called Explore Your Options.
Yes, indeed.
So the Explore Your Options was very specific to the 11 area agencies on aging. It actually captured the services available in that area, the providers available in that area, contact information. It was a booklet that was handed out at the state fair every single year.
Right.
It was updated every single year. It was printed every single year. And it had its critics, because some critics said the moment you print it, it's outdated. But it also had its strong supporters. And I do think that particular document was incredibly helpful to seniors and incredibly helpful to their caregivers. Now, whether caregivers today would be interested in reviewing that 15-page document booklet, or whether they'd go online, I don't know. But that Explore Your Options booklet was around for years and years and years, and it has been gone now for several years. So I'm not even sure it's electronic any longer. I'm not even sure at KDADS if we maintain it in its electronic format. I do think the 11 area agencies on aging have attempted to keep their Explore Your Options available on the website, I think, but it's still a very popular booklet, but the state doesn't print those any longer.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chairman, I'm done.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, any further questions?
Mr. Chairman,
good.
I've got a question. I've got a question for you.
Okay.
When you said that that a nursing home costs $40,000 a year, is that what you said?
I did. And that's
Was
a
that
guess, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I actually think it's a little higher than that, but I
Yeah.
haven't got this year's numbers.
Yeah, I think so too. But is that the state portion of it, or I just was wondering if that's the total that it costs for a year, or if we pay a percentage of that.
We do, and that's broken out by our percentage of FMAP. So you're correct. It's probably not that quite that expensive for us. But it may be even more than that when you figure in our nursing home assistance and the money that we spend for nursing home assistance through, and we'll hear a little bit more about that next week, but I have not, and I apologize for this, I have not broken out those numbers this year, but I will have those by the time we go into budget, and we'll be able to extrapolate these numbers into something that is understandable.
Okay, thank you. I realize, I understand it's a savings, but I'd sure like to be able to say exactly what it is, that it's saving the state.
We will
Thank
be
you.
able to say that.
Okay.
Any further questions? Committee, I just might add, certainly enjoy these brief meetings because it won't be that way when we get into the budget process. And I don't know how this year's going to look because of the testimony by WebEx and all this other stuff. But last year, I know in several of the more heated discussions around the budget, we were here on an early night till 6. So just enjoy these because it may not last. So anyway, it just pains me to
I'll second the motion. He's preparing all of us.
it just pains me to end the meeting before 5 o'clock. You know, it just hurts badly. So anyway, but with that, no more questions. Janice, thank you very much for being here, and we are adjourned.